Dr. Rajesh Kannan from IIT Kharagpur. Before joining IIT Kharagpur, he was a postdoctoral fellow at University of Manitoba and also at Israel Institute of Technology in 2015. Very significant award he received in 2020, that is the Excellent Young Teacher Award by IIT Kharagpur with the cash award of 2 lakh rupees beside this postdoctoral fellowship. Particularly, he is interested in what we can say that graphs, matrices, and a very significant thing I should mention here is that he is running a weekly seminar series on graphs, matrices. Very prominent speakers spoke there on the topic related to this. With this very brief introduction, I request Professor Kannan to share his views.
Thank you, Professor Joshi. Good morning to everybody. Thank you. I'd like to thank the organizers for the invitation and Professor Joshi for kind words. So I'll be giving 2 talks. First one is based on Laplacian matrices and their applications, and the second one will be based on co-spectral graphs. Both are sort of complementary talks. So just a minute, I can see people. Okay, so this is a rough idea of this talk. So you start with a problem. It's called the graph partitioning problem. This problem is not easy to solve in general. In terms of computational complexity point of view, this is an NP-hard problem. It's an NP-complete problem. So we will see a spectral approach to get an approximate solution to this problem. Okay, so that's the whole theme of this talk. Okay, and if time permits, I will discuss about one more application that's called spectral clustering. Okay, those who are interested in machine learning and artificial intelligence, you might have studied the concept of clustering, studied many clustering algorithms. Spectral clustering is one of the very useful algorithm in that field. Okay, so first let me introduce the problem. So we'll start with a simple graph. Okay, it can be a weighted one. Okay, so the vertex set of the graph will be denoted by V and the edge set will be denoted by E. Okay, so if you consider weighted graphs, then weights are non-negative real numbers. We'll assume that. Okay, so the graph partitioning problem, it's easy to state this as per this. So you have to find out subsets V1, V2, Vk of V such that their union should be equal to V and they are pairwise disjoint. Okay, that is, you are partitioning the given vertex set into k parts. Okay, so now we have one more constraint. We don't want to arbitrarily partition this vertex set into k parts. We want some balance constraint. So balance means cardinality of all vi's should be almost same. Okay, so note that if I denote the cardinality of v by n, okay, if I had to split these n vertices into k parts, okay, if n is not a multiple of k, then we may not be able to get the equal partition. So almost equal. So what is the meaning of almost equal? So mathematically we can write down in this way. So cardinality of VA is less than or equal to 1 plus some small epsilon times the integer part of cardinality of V by k. Or more precisely, like cardinality of if you take 2 different Vi and Vj, then the difference between cardinality of Va and Vj is at most 1. Okay, so either they are the same or they can differ by at most 1 element. Okay, I mean it's in cardinality. So this is the okay. So this is the balance constraint. So we need one more terminology to state the problem. Okay, so now we have partitioned our vertex set into k parts. Okay, so Va and Vj are elements of the partition. Okay, so Eij of Vi, Vj. Okay, so this is collection of all edges between the vertices of Va and Vj. Okay, in notation. So this is collection of all edges. Okay, this stands for an edge. Okay, Va, Vj in V, such that one end is in Vi, the other end is in Vj. Okay, and corresponding to this Eij, we associate a number. It's called the weight of this Eij. Okay, So it is just sum of the weights of all the edges sitting in Eij. Okay. So pictorially, suppose if Vi is here and Vj is here, then we are considering all the edges between the vertices between this partition Va and Vj. So each of them have some weight. Okay. So this is our So this is our Eij. Okay. These edges gives us these edges forms Eij, and each edge has some weight. You just take the sum of all the edge weights and call that as a W of Eij. Okay. So if you take all the weights to be equal to 1, then this Eij will simply count the number of edges between the vertices Va and Vj. Okay. Yeah, with this we can state our problem. The problem or the goal is we have to find a vertex partition of V, okay, of size k, okay, that we have to partition V into k parts such that these weights of Eij's, okay, corresponding to different I and j, you will get a W of Eij. Now you take sum of all these quantities. We want to minimize this quantity. Okay, so this is the quantity we are interested. We want to minimize this. Okay, is the problem clear? So we have to find out a vertex by partition with the balance vertex k partition. Okay, which satisfies this balance constraint. Okay, and one more restriction is we need these weights to be minimum. Okay, so this problem is a well-defined problem from algorithmic point of view or complexity taking point of view. So what is this? What's the nature of this problem? This problem is not an easy problem to solve. Okay, this is an NP complete problem. That means you don't have any easy algorithm to
Sorry, you are not audible.
This problem. Okay, so that's the difficulty of this problem. Now we will see a spectral approach to solve this problem. By spectral approach, I mean it's a kind of a relaxation. We will solve a relaxed problem, which will give an approximate solution to this problem. Okay, so I will discuss. I will not discuss about the limitations of the algorithm which we are going to discuss now, but I will give you the references. Okay, yeah. So if you have any doubt, you can stop me and you can ask me. Okay, at any time. So now, if you have any, if the problem is not clear, or if I'm too fast in some point, you can just tell me before proceed further. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. Okay, fine. So now we will move on to the tools which are going to use to solve this problem approximately. Yeah. So first object is adjacency matrix. Okay. So we will be working with okay, so first, for the time being, let us consider now unweighted graphs. Okay, that means we are working with undirected simple graphs. The edges are having no weight. Okay, so or you can assume the edges are having weight equal to 1. Okay, we are taking such a graph. Okay, so given a graph, we will associate a matrix with it. Okay, the first canonical matrix is called the adjacency matrix. Okay, if your graph is an if your graph has n vertices, then this adjacency matrix will have n rows and n columns. Okay, it is denoted by A of G. Okay, where the ijth entry is given by ijth entry is equal to 1 if I is adjacent to j. It is equal to 0 if there is no edge between them. Okay, I think you might have seen this definition in some of the previous lectures. I'm recalling. Let us see a simple example. Okay, so you consider this graph. This is a simple undirected graph. This is a graph on 4 vertices. So adjacency matrix is a 4 by 4 matrix. Okay, both the rows and columns are indexed by the vertex set of G. Now you see first row. I'll just explain the first row how we are filling. Rest of the rows we can fill on the. So it's a simple graph. We don't have any loop. So 1 1th entry is equal to 0. Because between the vertex 1 to itself, there is no edge. So 1 1th entry is 0. And 1 2th entry, if you see, that is an edge between the vertices 1 and 2. So 1 2th entry is equal to 1. Similarly, you look at 1 3 entry. So 1 3, there is an edge. So put 1 here. And 1 4, there is an edge. So 1 4th entry is also 1. Oops. Okay, let me fix this part. Okay, so and you can see that whenever you have an edge between the vertices I and j, as it's an undirected graph, you do have an edge between the vertices j and I. Okay, so ijth entry equal to 1, that will imply jith entry is also 1. That means if you know the ith row, then you know the ith column. Okay, so it's a symmetric matrix. So here, if you know the entries of the first row, then you can fill the you can use them to fill the entries of the first column. Okay, so it's a symmetric matrix. Okay, so what we can do with the adjacency matrices. So first, let us see some of the basic properties of adjacency matrices. Okay, so this adjacency matrix is a matrix theoretic quantity. This contains some combinatorial information about the graph. Okay, so combinatorial information means like number of paths or edges, something like that. Okay, so one basic property is the trivial thing. If the adjacency matrix is n by n matrix, then the graph should have n vertices. Okay, so that by looking at the matrix, you can say something more can be said. Okay, so what are they? You start with the connected graph. Okay, if A is its adjacency matrix, okay, then A is symmetric. Okay, that is clear, that we have already explained. Whenever you have an edge between the vertices I and j, then you do have an edge between the vertices j and I, as there is no direction. So A is always symmetric. Okay, so from linear algebra point of view, if you have a symmetric matrix, then I think that's the best you can have. Like this, you have Speckel theorem, and you can work with the matrices actually. Okay, and second property, which is little less non-trivial. So you take the sum of 2 by 2 principal minors of A. Okay, that will give you negative of the number of edges in your given graph. Okay, so what's the definition of 2 by 2 principal minors? Yeah, so let me just explain that. So you have a n by n matrix. Okay, so by 2 by 2 principal minors, I mean, so you take any two rows of your given matrix. Okay, if A of G is given like this, you take any two rows of the given matrix. Let's say you are taking ith row and jth row, then take the ith column and the jth column. Okay, so now you will get a 2 by 2 matrix corresponding to this intersection. Okay, that is the 2 by 2 matrix which is formed by the ith row and the jth row, and ith column and the jth column of your adjacency matrix A. Okay, so this is a 2 by 2 principal submatrix. The determinant of this 2 by 2 submatrix is determinant of this 2 by 2 principal submatrix is called a principal minor. Okay, so you find all 2 by 2 principal minors of adjacency matrix, and that will give you negative of number of edges in your given graph. Okay, so intuitively you can feel it. So what are the possibilities for minors of a 2 by 2 submatrix? So you see ith row, jth row, and ith column and jth column. So that forces something on the diagonal entry. So what can you say about the diagonal entries here? ith entry and jth entry.
0.
They should be 0. Okay, they should be 0. The reason is we are looking at the simple graph. So the only non-zero entry can occur in the ijth position and the jith position. Okay, so when do you have a non-zero entry in the ith position?
If we have an edge.
When you have an edge from the vertex I to j. So that means that this 2 by 2 principal minor will be equal to -1 whenever you have an edge. Okay, so how many edges are there? Those many 2 by 2 principal minors will be there, non-zero minors will be there. Okay, they will have -1. So you just take the sum of them, you will get negative of E of G, number of edges. So E of G stands for edges of G, and the cardinality of E of G is the number of edges in G. Okay, and using simple induction argument, you can prove the third statement. What is it? So as A is a square matrix, you can compute this A power k. Okay, so A square, A cube, and so on, A power k you can compute. So the ijth entry of the matrix A power k say something about something about the underlying graph. What does it say? The ijth entry of the matrix A power k equals to the number of walks of length k from the vertex I to the vertex j. Okay, so when you substitute k equal to 1, what does it say? This is simply the adjacency matrix. So it is giving the number of walks of length 1 from the vertex I to j. That means when you have an edge, you will get 1, otherwise you will get 0. Okay, so just from A to A square, just you carefully look at the matrix multiplication. Okay, how do you multiply A with itself? Okay, take the ith row and the jth column. So you just focus on the non-zero entries. Okay, so from A to A square, if you can convince yourself, then by a simple induction argument will give you the proof of the general case. Okay, so these are all some of the basic properties which you can infer from the matrix itself. So now you have a symmetric matrix. The spectrum of symmetric matrix, the eigenvalues of symmetric matrices are well studied objects. Okay. Now can you say something about the graph, okay, or the combinatorial properties of the graph in terms of the eigenvalues of the matrix A? Okay. So this is the main theme of the research field, spectral graph theory. Okay. So you associate a matrix, okay, and using the spectrum of the matrix, can you say something about the structural properties of your graph? Okay. So in the next slide, we will see a couple of interesting results. Yeah, which are known in the literature. Okay, so let me fix some more notations. This lambda 1 up to lambda n, they stands for the eigenvalues of the adjacency matrix A of G. As A of G is a symmetric matrix, all the eigenvalues are real, so we can compare them. So let us arrange the eigenvalues in this way. So lambda 1 stands for the largest eigenvalue, and delta of G denotes the maximum vertex degree of G, and the small delta of G denotes the minimum vertex degree of G. Okay. The first property is the largest eigenvalue lambda 1 is bounded above by the largest vertex degree of your graph and bounded below by the smallest vertex degree of the given graph. Okay, so this is just the routine. The proof is just routine idea in non-negative matrix theory. Okay, so the spectral radius of a non-negative matrix will be less than or equal to maximum of the row sum, will be greater than or equal to minimum of the rows. Okay, so that's the standard result in non-negative matrix theory. Just applying that, you will get it. And yeah, the second one is a little more non-trivial. The chromatic number. I guess the audience are comfortable with the basic graph theory. Chromatic number, the minimum number of colors required to color the given graph such that no two adjacent vertices receive same color. Okay, the minimum number of colors required to color the given graph so that no two adjacent vertices receive same color. That's a chromatic number. The chromatic number is again less than or equal to 1 plus lambda 1, where lambda 1 is the largest eigenvalue of your given adjacency matrix. Again, if you know about, I think, the complexity theory, computing this chromatic number of a given graph is also not an easy problem. I think so. If I'm right, if I'm wrong, please correct me. So this problem can be thought of as kind of this eigenvalue. The largest eigenvalue gives an approximation to the chromatic number. Okay. So this is called a Wills bound. I didn't write it in the literature. This is called, I think, Wills bound. 1960s, this result was proved. And in fact, Hoffman, this is called Hoffman's bound. I think there is a recent article in LAA which discusses about history of this bound. Okay, so first let me explain what is the bound. The chromatic number is greater than or equal to 1 minus the largest eigenvalue of your adjacency matrix by the smallest eigenvalue. Okay, so for this third result, for the Hoffman's bound, I assume the graph is non-empty. I mean, the graph at least have one edge. Okay, the reason is the lambda n. If you see, it is in the denominator. One natural question arises here: why lambda n is non-zero? First of all, okay. So lambda n is non-zero because if you take a symmetric matrix, okay, which is non-zero, then it will have a non-zero eigenvalue. Okay, and we are working with a trace zero matrix. Okay, so adjacency matrix, if you see, all the diagonal entries of the adjacency matrix are equal to 0. That means you are working with a trace zero matrix. So trace has another representation, that is, you take the sum of the eigenvalues, that is equal to trace. Okay, so you are working with a symmetric non-zero matrix, so it will have a non-zero eigenvalue. Okay, so if it has, so it should have at least one positive and at least one negative eigenvalue, as the trace is 0. Okay, so lambda n should be non-zero, and if you use the same observation, you can say that lambda n should be negative also. Okay, at first look, some of you might have maybe thought this bound is like you are having 1 here and you are subtracting some quantity from 1. So maybe this quantity, what's the guarantee that it will be more than 1? It can reduce if it is going further down, further below 1. There is no use of this bound, right? But lambda n is always negative. Okay, that makes this quantity will be always greater than or equal to 1. Okay, yeah, yeah. So this is called in literature Hoffman's bound. And there is a recent survey about this bound in linear algebra applications. If you're interested, you can see that. Okay, so another structural property which you can reveal from the spectrum of the adjacency matrix is the bipartiteness. Okay, if G is a bipartite graph, okay, G is a bipartite graph if and only if the eigenvalues of the adjacency matrix A are symmetric with respect to origin. Okay, so what is the meaning of a symmetric with respect to origin? Okay, that I have written here. Whenever lambda is an eigenvalue of A of G, okay, minus lambda is also an eigenvalue of A of G. Okay, so just pictorially, if you see, just to plot the eigenvalues in the real line, the eigenvalue, if it is your origin, okay, so whenever you have an eigenvalue here, you symmetrically you take negative of lambda, that is also an eigenvalue. Okay, so in fact, this is a characterization property for this characterizes the bipartiteness. Okay, so if you assume your graph to be a connected graph, something more can be said. You don't have to look at the entire all eigenvalues, just look at the largest eigenvalue. Okay, if both the largest eigenvalue as well as negative of the largest eigenvalue, if they are eigenvalues of your adjacency matrix, then the graph is a bipartite graph. Okay, it is much weaker than this statement when you assume the graph is connected. Okay, so do you have any question in this part? I think I stated some of the important properties of adjacency matrices in this slide. Okay. Okay, I hope this part was not covered in the previous lectures, right? It's the first time you are seeing, or you have already seen this?
First time, sir.
First time. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, great. Okay, if you don't have any doubt, I can move on. Great. Okay, so as I said in the beginning, given a matrix, given a graph, we can associate the many various matrices with them. Okay, so adjacency matrices is one of the very canonical and first matrix we are associating with the given graph. Okay, so there is another matrix is called Laplacian matrix. Okay, so which is defined in this way. Okay, so you take a graph G, okay, whose vertices are denoted indexed by 1 to n and the edges are indexed by E1 to Em. The Laplacian matrix again is an n by n matrix, okay, whose ijth entry is given by, how do we define the ijth entry? So rows and columns are indexed by the vertex set, and for I different from j, the ijth entry of L of G is 0 if the vertices I and j are not adjacent. Okay, and it will be equal to -1 if the vertices I and j are adjacent. Okay, so kind of from adjacency you can get it. So in the adjacency matrices, for the off diagonal entries, whenever you have an edge, you will keep 1. Okay, in Laplacian, whenever you have an edge, you keep -1 in the off diagonal entry, and in the rest of the places keep 0. Okay, so diagonal entries I make to specify. So the ith entry, the ith diagonal entry is di, but di is the degree of the vertex, ith vertex. Okay, so you have n diagonal entries. Okay, so ith diagonal entry corresponds to the ith vertex. Okay, you just look at the degree of the particular vertex in your underlying graph. You keep that in the diagonal part. Okay, so this can be stated in this equivalent way. So if you know your adjacency matrix, okay, if A of G is your adjacency matrix and D of G is the diagonal matrix whose diagonal entries are vertex degrees, then L of G admits this nice representation. L of G equal to D of G minus A of G. Okay, so we can define from adjacency matrix in this way. So this Laplacian matrix contains a lot of combinatorial information about the underlying graph. You can say about the connectedness of the underlying graph using the eigenvalues of L of G. So we will see that. So what do I mean by that? Connectedness, how it is related to the eigenvalues of Laplacian. Okay, before let me give another example. It's the same example which I gave for adjacency matrices. Okay, so off diagonal entries, just let us focus on only first row. So off diagonal entries -1. Whenever you have an edge, put -1. Okay, So diagonal entry, just you take the degree of the vertex. You keep the degree of the vertex in this place. Okay. So let us observe something which will play a crucial role in the upcoming slides. What is the sum of the rows? So you fix one row. Okay, just take the sum of the entries in the row.
0.
So in this case, you see everywhere you are getting 0. First row it is 3 and -1 for 3 times, that is 0. Here it is 2 and -1 for 2 times, it is 0. For all rows, the same thing is happening. Okay, so this is not this is like we can infer from the from the definition. So you are keeping in a fixed row, you are keeping -1 for how many times? How many edges are there for that particular vertex? You are keeping those many -1s. Okay, so that means the -1 you are keeping for degree of that particular vertex. Okay, so if you are focusing on the ith row, then -1 will be there in the ith row for di times. Okay, and you're keeping that di, the degree of the vertex, in the diagonal. So when you sum the ith row, you are going to get 0. Okay, so what is the importance of this observation? So let me just tell you here. So if n1 transpose you take, okay, or compatibility. So if you compute this matrix vector multiplication, what will you get?
Zero.
The zero vector.
Zero matrix.
Zero vector you will get, right?
Yes.
Zero vector. Yeah, great. So zero vector you will get. And now you see the 0 can be written as 0 into E. It should tell you something.
0 is the eigenvalue.
0 is an eigenvalue. Okay, irrespective of your given graph, you take any graph, for that graph, the Laplacian will have 0 as an eigenvalue. Okay, so the Laplacian will be always singular. Okay, the Laplacian will be always singular. So 0 will be always an eigenvalue. Okay, so in fact, we will show that this Laplacian will be positive semi-definite. Okay, and the second smallest eigenvalue of the Laplacian will tell you how well your graph is connected. Okay, let us move on. Yeah, so these are some of the properties. Maybe I can project them. Okay, so these two properties I will discuss. So G is any graph, and Laplacian is given by L of G. The row sums and column sums of L of G are equal to 0. Okay, so row sums are 0, we have just seen, and column sums are 0. As we are working with symmetric matrix, the row sums are 0, then the column sums should be equal to 0, right? Because L of G is a symmetric matrix. Ith row sum is 0, that means that ith column sum is also 0. L of G transpose is equal to L of G. Simply apply that, you will get it. So this is one of the amazing property. So I would say the quadratic form X transpose L of G into X is admit the sum of squares form. Okay, so what is that? So you take any vector X, okay, n vector X, you compute this X transpose L of G into X. Okay, so some of you may know this quantity, this thing, the quadratic form associated with this vector X and the Laplacian. So this has this nice form. What is that? So Xi stands for the coordinates of this vector X. Okay, so this is summation Xi minus Xj the whole square, where the summation runs over all the adjacent vertices of the given graph. So you can think of this quantity as like this. So you are having a vector X, okay, and the quadratic form X transpose L of G into X. Okay, so this measures the variations inside the vector X, okay, among the coordinates, okay, so which are related by the underlying graph, by a given graph. Okay, this is sort of measuring the variations in the coordinates. Okay, the which coordinates we are going to compare, those things are given by the underlying graph, which vertices are connected by some edge. Okay, so this is one of the physical meaning of this quantity, but this is one of the most applied quantity in many of the new research which are happening today. So one such thing is the spectral spacifier. You know about how to specify a given graph, okay, approximating the large dense graph by sparse graph. Okay, so recently, not very recently, 2010, around 2010, Spielman, Tang, and Srivastava, they have used this quantity to define the spectral sparsifiers. Okay, and this guy will play a crucial role in our today's lecture also. Okay, yeah. So coming back to this part, as this quantity X transpose L of G into X is the sum of squares, so this is always non-negative. Okay, for every vector X, this is non-negative. That means that your Laplacian L of G is positive semi-definite. Okay, so when do you say a matrix is a positive semi-definite, the real matrix? If it is symmetric and if the quadratic form associated with the matrix is non-negative. Okay, so this means that your Laplacian is a positive semi-definite matrix. Okay, and the basic theorem says that you can use either spectral theorem or some of the basic properties of positive semi-definite matrices to conclude that all the eigenvalues of positive semi-definite matrices are non-negative. Okay, and we have already observed that the 0 is an eigenvalue, so 0 is the least eigenvalue of your Laplacian matrix. Great. Yeah, that's what I have written here. So L of G is symmetric and the quadratic form is non-negative. So L of G is a symmetric positive semi-definite matrix.
Sir, may I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Can you show by an example how it works, this formula?
This formula, okay, you take, let us take some simple exercise. V1, V2, V3. Okay, what is your Laplacian? 1, minus 1, 0, minus 1, 0, 2, minus 1, minus 1, 1. Right? V1, V2, V3. Okay, so you take this vector X to be all ones vector you take. Okay, so all ones vector of no use because it will give you always 0. Right? So let us take some, let me take 1, 2, 1. Let us take like this. Okay. So what will happen to X transpose Lx? So X transpose Lx, you can apply this formula to compute. So now you take 1 corresponding to 1 and 2, you have an entry. So 1 minus 2 whole square plus 2 and 3, you have something. So 2 minus 1 whole square. Yeah, this is 1 plus 1. So this quadratic form will be, the value will be equal to 2. Okay. Great. Okay, the proofs, I'll just give an outline of the proof. The first one, the proof of the first part, that is row sums and column sums are equal to 0. That's clear from the definition that we had a discussion. Now, proof for the second part, just you apply that that equivalent representation, L equal to D minus A we have. So just if you want to compute X transpose Lx, just apply, just substitute L equal to D minus A in this expression. Okay. And then as it's a diagonal matrix, for the diagonal matrix, this quadratic form can be written in this nice way, dA into xi square. Okay. And for adjacency matrices, so this is an so this can be shown very easily. Okay. So ijth entry will be different from 0. Okay. Only those indices xi and xj will survive in this quadratic form. Okay. And a simple manipulation, just to multiply and divide by 2, you will arrive at this formula. Okay, this is a simple exercise just for the sake of completeness. I have given a proof. Okay, just verify step by step. Okay. Yeah, as L of G is symmetric, so and this formula says that the quadratic form is non-negative. So you have the positive semi-definiteness of your Laplacian. Okay, so the Laplacian here it is positive semi-definite. Okay, in fact, there is the other way of defining Laplacian also. That's called signless Laplacian. Okay, so some of you may ask, so you are defining your Laplacian to be D minus A. So why not D plus A? One can ask, right? You can define D plus A. Yeah, people ask this question and they have studied. This is called signless Laplacian. I'll write on SL signless Laplacian. Okay, so this Laplacian also contains a lot of combinatorial information about the underlying graph G. Okay, so there are many things are not known for the signless Laplacian. So one property is if you are working with the trees or in general bipartite graphs, your signless Laplacian spectrum and the Laplacian spectrum will be the same. Okay, at least in the bipartite case, the signless Laplacian may not be of very useful, but nevertheless, it contains a lot of combinatorial information. So I will give you some sources about the basics of spectral graph theory, where the authors are comparing what are all the some well-known classes of matrices associated with the given graph. What are all the combinatorial informations we can extract from the spectrum or that particular matrix? Okay, yeah, and what are all the things we cannot extract from that particular matrix? Okay, so this tells you the theme of tomorrow's lecture. Okay, so co-spectral means in general, like you have two matrices which are having same spectrum. Those type of those matrices are called co-spectral matrices. Okay, so two matrices, if they have same spectrum, we call those matrices co-spectral. Now we are going to call two graphs are co-spectral graphs. Okay, for adjacency matrices, if those two graphs are having co-spectral adjacency matrices. Okay, that means that you have two graphs which are having same adjacency spectrum. One natural question is whether the graph will be isomorphic. If they have the same spectrum, if two graphs with respect to the adjacency matrix, if they have the same spectrum, okay, in terms of graphs, can we expect the graph should be isomorphic? Okay, so there was a myth in late 1950s. People believed that if the adjacency spectrum are the same, then the graph should be isomorphic, but that's not the case. Okay, even co-spectral graphs can have different can be non-isomorphic. Okay, tomorrow we will see some of the examples of construction of those type of objects. Okay. Okay, so that's a general theme of what we're going to do. Okay, so we have seen that 0 is always an eigenvalue of Laplacian. Okay, and as we are working with a symmetric matrix, the rank and multiplicity of the eigenvalue 0, they have a nice relationship. Okay, so can you say, like, if you have a symmetric matrix, let's say 0 is having multiplicity k, then what can you say about the rank of the matrix? It's an n by n matrix. Let's say you're working with an n by n matrix. 0 is an eigenvalue with the multiplicity k. Then what can you say about the rank of the matrix?
Is it n minus k?
It is n minus k. Okay. Suppose if I draw the assumption it's a symmetric matrix, can you say? This is kind of very less known. It need not be true. If you are working with a non-symmetric matrices, or more generally, if you are working with a non-diagonalizable matrices, then that will not work. Okay. The simplest example is you can take this upper triangular matrix 0, 1, 0, 0. It has rank 1. Still, it has 0 with multiplicity 2. Okay, so this will not happen. So this matrix is not diagnosable. It's a nilpotent matrix, non-zero nilpotent matrix, so it is not diagnosable. Okay, so that result holds up to diagnosable matrices. Okay, for sure. So the multiplicity of 0 and rank of the matrix you can compare. Okay, so what is the point of telling that result here? So you see here, the rank of the Laplacian L of G is equal to n minus k, where k is the number of connected components. So rank of L of G, okay, that means the rank of L of G is equal to n minus k. That means multiplicity of 0 as an eigenvalue for Laplacian should be equal to k, as L of G is a symmetric matrix. Okay, as L of G is a symmetric matrix, so rank, if it is equal to n minus k, then the multiplicity of the eigenvalue 0, that should be equal to k. So when you take k to be equal to 1, what's happening? So a graph with only one component, so that is a connected graph. So if you have a connected graph, then the rank of the Laplacian should be equal to n minus 1. That means 0 is the eigenvalue with the multiplicity, algebraic multiplicity equal to 1. Okay. So for a connected graph, I repeat, 0 is a simple eigenvalue. Okay, or 0 is the eigenvalue with the multiplicity equal to 1. Okay. So the second smallest eigenvalue, which we will call lambda 2, that should be different from 0. Okay, so again, I have included a proof. The proof is really a beautiful proof. Yeah, so we'll prove it by induction. Okay, so or by case we can prove. Let us take first k equal to 1. Okay, that is the graph G is connected. 0 is an eigenvalue of L of G. Okay, so that we have already seen. You take the all ones vector all ones vector is an eigenvector corresponding to the eigenvalue 0. Okay, so this is in spectral graph theory, this is one of the useful technique. Sometimes if you don't know how to find out the eigenvalue, you guess something for eigenvector, from there you try to construct the eigenvalue. Okay. Yeah. So now k equal to 1, the graph G is connected, so 0 is an eigenvalue. Now let us take x is the eigenvalue corresponding to eigenvector corresponding to the eigenvalue 0. Okay, so x is an eigenvector corresponding to the eigenvalue 0. So Lx equal to 0. Okay, so Lx equal to 0 we have. So as Lx equal to 0, if you consider this quadratic form x transpose Lx, that should be also equal to 0. So now in the previous slide we have inferred that quadratic form admits an equivalent representation in this sum of squares. Okay. Now you see sum of some non-negative numbers is equal to 0. That means that each term in this sum should be equal to 0. That means xi equal to xj whenever I is adjacent to j. Okay. So if you have an eigenvector, the components of the eigenvectors are labeled by the vertices. Okay. So two components of the eigenvector corresponding to the eigenvalue 0 are the same if the corresponding vertices in the underlying graph, if they are adjacent. Okay, that's what it says. Xi equal to xj whenever the vertices I and j are adjacent, as this sum runs over the adjacent vertices. Okay. So since the graph is connected between any two vertices, you will have a path. Okay. Suppose if the vertices I and j are not connected, still I claim that the components corresponding to the vertex I and the vertex j, they should have same magnitude. The reason is the graph is connected, I will find a path between I and j, the vertices I and j. Okay. So let's say I plus 1, I plus 2, and so on up to j. Okay. As I and I plus 1 are connected by an edge, joined by an edge. So I entry and I plus 1 entry are the same. And I plus 1 entry, I plus 2 entry, between them there is an edge. So I plus 1 entry should be equal to I plus 2 entry. That is I entry, I plus 1 entry, and I plus 2 entry, they are the same. Okay, just to extend this argument inductively. So between any two vertices, you have a path. Okay, so you can keep one vertex as a root, and you can grow your tree in all possible directions and complete your tree. Then you can conclude all the components are equal to the components of your root. Okay, so that means that that eigenvector, whatever you are getting, that is simply a multiple of the all ones vector. That means that the geometric multiplicity of your eigenvalue 0 is equal to 1. As we are working with a symmetric matrix, okay, geometric multiplicity equal to 1 means algebraic multiplicity also should be equal to 1. Okay, so that shows that if your graph is a connected graph, then 0 is a simple eigenvalue. Okay, so those all the details I have written here. Okay, if I'm not clear, you can just ask me now, or you can go through over the slide and convince yourself.
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, you given one counter example in previous case. Can you explain this statement with that counter example, sir? Laplacian matrix 1 minus 1 0 minus 1 2 minus 1 and 0 minus 1 1. What is the rank of this Laplacian matrix according to this statement?
That should be 1. Sorry, 2. N minus 1 2.
N minus 1.
N minus 1.
K is 1. Sir. In that case. K is 1 in that case.
N minus 1, n equal to 3 in that case. You have 3 vertices.
Okay, 3 vertex.
So if you look
K
at
equal to 1.
Yes.
K equal to 1.
K equal to 1.
K equal to 1, n equal to 3.
K is the number of connected components. Okay.
K is the number of connected components. Yeah. So there we are working with a connected graph. So number of connected components is equal to 1. So I think you can see the slide, right? So this is the example I have given.
Is multiplicity of 0 is 1.
Yes. It has rank 2. Like you just to look at this component, this 2 by 2 block, you'll be able to show that this has determinant different from 0. So it's a rank 2 matrix. Okay. Great. Are there other questions before I proceed? I will project that proof slide. Yeah. Okay, if you understood this proof, then the proof for the case strictly greater than 1, it's not all it's not all tough, because you just to focus on the components of your disconnected graph. For each component, you will get the relation. Each component is connected. So for each component, you will get something like n1 minus 1, where n1 is the number of vertices in that particular component. Suppose if you have k components, then you will get n1 minus 1, n2 minus 1, and so on up to nk minus 1. You sum all these things, you will get n minus k. Okay, so that's an easy exercise to verify. You can see that. Yeah. Any question? Okay, great. So let us move on to the promised problem, which I started with, the graph partitioning problem. Okay, so I'm calling this a spectral partition. Okay, so this is how it's called in the literature. So you take this vertex at B equal to V1 union. So I have stated the problem for K partition. Now we will consider only bipartition. Okay, just a toy example I'm trying to illustrate with a toy example. Okay, you take V equal to V1 union V2. Okay, it's a bipartition. Okay, so let us assume cardinality of B is even. Okay, number of elements in the vertex.
Professor.
Yes.
Is the bipartition is as in bipartite?
Okay. Yeah. You got that. You are right. This is bisection, not bipartition. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you are right. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So this is not the usual bipartition. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Yeah. This is bisection. So in the usual bipartition, you don't allow edges between the vertices of same partite set. Okay. So here you can have it if you remember the problem which I stated there.
Yeah. Okay. Now I get it.
Yeah. Thank you. So bisection. Yeah. Okay, so now we are going to associate a vector with a given bisection. Okay, how to do that? So xi is a plus or minus 1 vector. Okay, so xi equal to +1 if I belongs if the component I belongs to, if the coordinate I belongs to V1, and it is equal to -1 if the coordinate I belongs to V2. Okay, so we are the graph we are bisecting into two parts. Okay, so whenever you have a vertex over here, let's call this as V1, this is V2. Whenever you have a vertex over here, you keep 1 in this vector x, and whenever you have a vertex in V2, you keep -1 here. Okay, so this is an n vector if your V contains n elements. Okay, so this element, so this will tell you something interesting about the quadratic form associated with this vector. Reveals something about the underlying graph. Let's see what is it. Okay, so let us compute this quadratic form x transpose Lx. So this we have already shown. This x transpose Lx is nothing but you take this sum of squares over adjacent vertices. Okay, so now what are the choices for this quantity? You see, if I take x to be this particular vector, okay, what are the choices for this quantity xi minus xj the whole square? Okay, so I and j, there are two vertices. Okay, and we have two partition v1 and v2. Okay, so total there are four possibilities. The vertices I and j, both of them can be in v1, or both of them can be in v2, or I is in v1 and j is in v2, or vice versa. I is in v2, j is in v1.
0.
Yeah.
0, 2, -2.
Yeah, just a minute. Yes, 0 -2. Those are the only possibilities. I will come to the part. Okay, so I and j, both of them can be here, or I and j, both of them can be here. This is two possibilities. Or I can be here and j can be here, or in the reverse way, j can be here and I can be here. Okay, these are the four possibilities. So if both I and j are in v1, then what you get? X1 and xj both are equal to 1, you will get 0. Okay, similarly, if I and j both are in v2, then you will get -1 -1, so that is again equal to 0. So you will not get anything in this sum. The non-zero quantities you will get only when one is in v1, the other one is in v2. Okay, so xi minus xj will be equal to +2 if I belongs to v1 and j belongs to v2. I belongs to v1, j belongs to v2, and it will be -2 if I belongs to v2 and j belongs to v1. Okay, you are taking square, so it doesn't matter. Like we are going to get 4. Okay, so whenever you have an now you can see that the graph partition, the edges are coming naturally. So whenever you have an edge from V1 to V2, corresponding to this, you will get a 4 here, right? So we started with a strange vector, but this quantity is saying whenever I have an edge from V1 to V2, in all those cases, I will get 4. So simply this quantity measures 4 times the number of edges from V1 to V2. Okay, so in case of, I'm just considering unweighted case. If you want to go for weighted case, the same argument will work. Okay, say ditto argument will work. So now I have connected the problem with this quadratic form. Okay, this is the crucial, this is the crux of this my today's talk. If this point is clear, then I'll be very happy to very happy. So number of edges from V1 to V2, that is captured in this quantity X transpose Lx for the Laplacian. So now we started with the graph theoretic problem, and we expressed that graph theoretic quantity which we want to compute in terms of a matrix theoretic quantity. Okay, so now the problem is I have to find out the minimum value for this E of V1 comma V2, right? So in terms of the matrix point of view, what is the problem? So now I have to find out a vector whose components are +1 and -1. Okay, and number of +1 should be equal to number of -1 in the vector X. Okay, because we are bisection we are looking at. Okay, so number of +1 should be equal to number of -1s. That constraint we have, and this quantity X transpose Lx should be minimum. Okay, so now I have to minimize a quadratic form X transpose Lx subject to X, where X is a vector, all whose entries are either +1 or -1, and exactly half of the entries of X are +1 and half of the entries are -1. Okay, so that's the problem I have mentioned here. So by finding a bisection, okay, so I will correct it by mistake. I have written, okay, I was abusing the notation. Okay, bipartition is not the correct word, bisection. Okay, so the bisection such that the weight is minimum. Okay, that is equivalent to find a vector, okay, which minimizes this quadratic form. So this comes from this expression. Okay, so now onwards I will be working with this X transpose Lx. Okay, yeah. Again, those who know about complexity theory, you can see this is again we started with a tough problem and we have converted the tough problem into another tough problem. Okay, so this is an integer programming problem, right? So our objective function is X transpose Lx, but the constraints are integer constraints. This is again a hard problem to solve. But here you have one more advantage. If you cannot solve this integer programming problem, we can relax this problem to just a linear programming problem. Okay, and then we can solve it and we can get the approximate solution to the given problem. That's what we are going to do. So I'm going to relax this problem. So instead of taking okay, so before that. Is it clear why the constraint, both the constraints, are they clear? How we got the constraints? X transpose 1 equal to 0 means you are looking for a bisection. Okay, so half of them equal to 1 and half of them equal to -1. So when you take this X transpose 1, that means you are simply summing the entries of your vector X. Half of the entries are 1, half of the entries are -1. When you sum all of them, you will get 0. Okay, Xi belongs to +1 and -1. That is the way. That's the way we have defined our vector. So this is X transpose 1x taking care about the balance constraint. Okay. So the relaxed problem is I don't want to work with this +1 -1 vectors anymore. I will work with general vectors in R power n. Okay, whose 2 norm is equal to 1. Just a normalization we are going to do something like 1/√n you will get. You can skip it. That will not affect your solution. Okay. Yeah, and this problem, yeah, I have shown you the slide. Yeah, so this problem is maybe your first course in multivariable calculus you might have seen. So this is a typical quadratic optimization problem. You can go for Lagrange's multiplier method first of all. Okay, so if we first let us see can we solve this problem analytically. Okay, so analytically, if you have to solve this quadratic optimization problem, you have to go for Lagrange's multiplier method. Okay. So the Lagrangian is given by the objective function minus the first constant times the first constraint, the second constant time the second constraint. Okay, so both the constraints are written here. So this is a length like
Excuse me.
Yes.
In this relaxation problem, what is the norm you are considering?
This is 2 norm you can.
2 norm.
2 norm you can.
But then does it? I mean, how does it relax? How the two problems are related? The relaxed problem and the original.
Okay, so that means that when you get a solution to this relaxed problem, that will give you an approximate solution to the original problem. That's what I mean by relaxation. Okay, so we will not able to get the exact solution, because to solve this problem you have polynomial time algorithms. Like you have given a linear programming problem, you have, I think, this interior point method. Those methods will give you a polynomial time algorithm to solve this type of. Okay. Sorry, it's not linear programming problem. It's just an optimization problem. Okay. So for this quadratic optimization problem, there are polynomial time algorithms with this constraint. But this is a hard problem. It's an integer programming problem. Okay. So we are just by relaxation, maybe to be put it in a proper way, we are relaxing the constraints. So I have constraints here, x transpose 1 equal to 0 and xi belongs to plus minus 1. Okay, those constraints we are relaxing over. Okay, so these constraints will be subset of these constraints. Okay. By enlarging the problem, we will be able to solve this problem efficiently.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So there is no guarantee that the relaxed problem will give you a best answer to the given the problem which we started. Okay, so that is a separate analysis for that part. I will not go into those details. I will give you the reference. You can go through over that. Okay, so yeah, so let us apply this Lagrange's multiplier method. So what we have to do, first compute the partial derivative with respect to x, and then partial derivative with respect to lambda 1, and the partial derivative with respect to lambda 2. So these equations, yeah, so they say something to us. See, the second equation says x transpose 1 equal to 0. Okay, so let us try to use this in the first one. So if I take 1 transpose into lambda 2x. What is 1 transpose into Lx? So L1, you know. So 1 means, I mean E, all ones vector. Okay. So all, okay. Maybe I don't want to abuse, use different notations. E is already we know all ones vector. What is E transpose here?
That will be 0.
That is 0 vector. Okay, that's a 0 vector. So that means that this quantity is equal to 0. And what about E transpose X? So X we have, you just look at the constraint of our problem. X transpose 1 equal to 0. Okay, so here that 1 is the constant vector 1, all ones vector. So this is also E here. Okay, that means E transpose X is also equal to 0. Just you take the transpose of it, you will get. Okay. Otherwise, in the beginning, I said that the row sum and column sums of the Laplacian are equal to 0. E transpose L is nothing but just you are taking the column sums of your Laplacian. E transpose L is nothing but you are just taking the column sums of the Laplacian, that is equal to 0 vector. So this component is equal to 0, and E transpose X is equal to 0. This is because of the given constraint. So you are left with only this part. So what does it say? Lambda 1 into E transpose 1. E transpose 1 is n. So lambda 1 into n equal to 0, that means that lambda 1 equal to 0. So in these constraints, lambda 1 should be equal to 0. So if you substitute lambda 1 equal to 0 in this constraint, then you will get that magic identity, Lx equal to lambda 2x. So here the eigenvalue problem. So this is nothing but x is an eigenvector corresponding to the eigenvalue lambda 2 of your Laplacian. Okay, so if I had to minimize the quadratic form x transpose Lx, okay, I can choose this or third equation. If you see that shows that norm of x is also equal to 1. So when I apply x transpose on both sides, I can safely skip this x transpose x. So minimizing this quantity is same as minimizing my eigenvalues. Okay, eigenvalues of the Laplacian. So the reformulated problem is I have to minimize this lambda 2, okay, subject to the constraints are the eigen constraints. And we have already seen that lambda equal to 0 is always an eigenvalue. So minimum will be always equal to 0, but the 0 will not give any much relevant information for our problem. Okay. So lambda 2 is the smallest eigenvalue. Okay, the second smallest eigenvalue. Okay, if we take that, then the solution is given in this way. I will just project the entire thing. Yeah. So if X is the solution to the equivalent problem, okay, that means that this is the eigenvector corresponding to the second smallest eigenvalue lambda. Okay. Then it's a real eigenvector. Components are real. Okay, you just take the median of those entries. Okay, x1, x2 up to xn. You take the median of all those entries. Okay, and depending upon this comparison. Okay, so if the ith component of your vector x, if it is strictly less than the median, then you keep 1, and if it is greater than or equal to m bar, you keep -1. Okay, so this will give an approximate solution to the given bipartition problem. Okay. So this method may not work always. Okay. So as you know, like in ML and AI, you don't, for many of the problems, you don't have the exact solution to the given problem. You need only approximate solution to the given problem. Even if you don't know how to solve your problem exactly, there are various relaxation methods out there. This relaxation method is a spectral relaxation method. Okay. So in fact, we'll see one more concept called spectral clustering. Okay, so these are all based on the eigenvalues and eigenvectors of your Laplacian. Okay, so sometimes we don't have to call this as an algorithm. This is a heuristic. Okay, it may not work always. Okay, so when it will work, when it will not work, there are detailed analysis on these parts. One could go through. Okay. Yeah, do you have any doubt in this part as of now?
By relaxation, one means that you're posing a general problem so that it becomes a simpler one. You have more general constraints, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Only the constraints I am relaxing. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Can we replace that constraint by a linear constraint that xi lies between -1 to 1?
Linear only in the objective function. So I was using that word linear programming because if the objective is not linear function, it's a quadratic form. So linear I cannot use that. So here, of course, if your question is can I restrict my constraint only to the interval -1 to 1? Of course, you can do that, but what is the complexity of solving that problem, that I don't know. At least for here, if you're relaxing to the entire Rn, then you have this Lagrange's multiplier method. As a toy example, I'm able to show that like analytically you can solve. Okay, so even if it is difficult, there are some solvers out there. We can go there and can get the approximate solution. Yeah.
So this relaxed problem is polynomial time, is it?
Yeah, I think it is a polynomial time algorithm. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, polynomial time. You can maybe you can. I'm not a very expert in this field, in this optimization field, but quadratic programming problem, maybe we can convert it to STP, and to solve STP semi-definite programming problem, that you can get this. I think interior point methods for semi STP are available. You can use it, or I think directly there are some methods. Yeah. Are there other questions? This is a heuristic. Okay, so that I would like to emphasize again. It's not an algorithm. You will not get the answer always. There will be an analysis on this part. This is whatever we have proposed. There are many papers discussing the validity of this process. Okay, so I think I have another 20 minutes, right? 1:15 I have to stop, right?
Yes.
Okay. I will state the next problem. Okay, so that's the last time. I think I told you that even before projecting. Okay, so the next problem is clustering problem. This is one of the interesting problem and basic problem considered in machine learning and artificial intelligence. So you have a set of endpoints, okay, x1, x2 up to xn, okay, n data you can take, okay, and you do have a notion of similarity between them, okay. So you have some n data and there is some similarity method. So if it is too abstract, just think of these n points as points in the Euclidean space, okay. The similarity measure Sij you can thought of as distance between them, okay, or in R2 itself you can take R2, you take n points, between the n points you say 2 points are similar if the distance between them is relatively small, okay. So this can be replaced with any of your any of the physical problems, okay. Yeah, so our goal is we have to divide these data points into several groups such that the points in the same group, they are similar to each other. Points in the different group, they are dissimilar, okay. So that is one natural like problem to consider, okay. So in any platform, like people of same expertise, it's like we can group them, they may work more efficiently, like, or here in terms of mathematics, if you see, like if I want to group the points in R2, okay, which are lying close to each other in one group, and naturally if you are taking 2 points in different groups, they should stay away from each other, okay, relatively. Great. So how to handle this problem via spectral graph theory, okay, using Laplacians. So first point is I have to associate a matrix with it, okay. So first let us define the similarity graph. So in literature there is no unique way of associating a graph with the given data, okay. There are at least 3 methods I know. So let me just tell one by one. At least let me tell one of them, okay. So we have this n data points and you have the similarity measure Sij. Okay, this you can think of as kind of a weighted graph. So every vertex of your graph will represent a data point. This x's will be represented by the graph, vertices of the graph. So 2 vertices of your given graph are connected by an edge, okay. So if and only if the similarity between the 2 vertices xi and xj, or 2 data points xi and xj, if they are larger than some threshold value, okay. Some threshold means like I will say you take n points in R2, okay. So we are going to associate a graph with that n points, okay. So I will say if 2 points are having distance less than half or greater than half, you draw an edge between them, okay. If the 2 points are having distance less than half, then we will not draw an edge between them, okay. So that's the meaning of threshold. So this is one way of doing it, okay. So using this similarity measure and a given threshold value, you will be able to associate a graph with the given data points, okay. Yeah. So the clustering problem, which we stated in plain language, in terms of graphs, it translates into this. So we had to find out the vertex partition, okay, of G such that edges between different groups have low weights, okay, and edges between the same group have high weights, okay. So if the similarity is more, they will be in the same group. So we should expect that the weights of the edges between those clusters should be high, okay, and similarity between different groups of points from different groups, they should be low, okay. So now you can connect with the first problem which we discussed, okay. So I repeat, this is one way of associating a graph. There are other ways. Using exponential you can do. So that is like you don't keep any threshold values. Whenever you have so you will draw a complete graph whose edge weights are given by, just you take the e power something like Sij, some normalization you have to do. Using this exponential you can do that. That is one way of associating a matrix with that.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
May I touch it? Yes.
What do we mean by high weights and how do we compare them? High weights. What can be called high and?
So in the third step or the second step?
Hello.
So after grouping it, so okay, that's a relative terminology. Okay, after grouping them, Okay, so if you take the weights of the edges between this in the same group, okay, so they should be high. Okay, the similarity of those data points should be high compared to points which are sitting in the different clusters. Okay, so when you take 2 points from 2 different clusters, and if you have an edge between them, you take the weight of that weight should be less than weight of the edges which are sitting inside the same same cluster.
Okay, so we are just comparing those two sets.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so just again, I'm going to give a algorithm, or again, it's a heuristic. So the similarity, so what is given to us? So given the for us, the given data is a similarity matrix S is given to us. Okay, and we'll be given how many clusters to construct. Okay, so I want to construct K clusters. So how to construct those K clusters? So this I have given the name unnormalized spectral clustering. The reason is there is something called normalized spectral clustering. I will just briefly tell at the end. Okay. Yeah. So what's the procedure? So first associate the matrix, associate a graph. So that how to associate the graph I have explained. So you just look at the adjacency matrix, the weighted adjacency matrix of the constructed similarity graph. Then look at the unnormalized Laplacian. Okay, so there is something called normalized Laplacian, which I didn't speak today. So whatever Laplacian which I discussed today, that is called unnormalized Laplacian. There is the notion of normalized Laplacian. One can do this thing with the normalized Laplacian also. Yeah. So this is the idea. First, compute the first K eigenvectors of your Laplacian L of G. Okay. Then you form this matrix U. Okay, so this matrix U is formed by the first K eigenvectors of your column vectors U1, U2 up to UK. That's basically the eigenvectors. Okay, this is an n by K matrix. Now you look at the rows of this n by K matrix. Okay, so you will have n rows. Okay, let us call those rows by YIs. Okay. So you are taking first K eigenvectors, okay, and then forming this n by K matrix. Now you look at the rows of this matrix, okay. So these rows will have n rows you have, okay. Now based on these n rows, we will cluster our points, okay. So how to cluster those rows? For clustering them, you can use the K-means algorithm, which I didn't discuss today. This is a well-known one of the naive algorithm. Discussed in ML. Okay, you can use those algorithms and you can cluster these points into K groups. Okay, so and then based on this clustering, you can so you do no clustering of these data with respect using this K-means algorithm. Okay, so you can use those clustering to classify or cluster the given data. Okay, so you are going to define the clustering A1, A2 up to AK. Where AI consists of all data points or all vertices J, such that in this K-means clustering, whatever you got, okay, if that Yj, if it is in Ci. Okay, the same thing can be done using normalized Laplacian also. Okay, so in fact that was both of them found many applications. For the normalized Laplacian, I think Shi and Malik in I think in the beginning of 2000, they have found an algorithm. They found some nice application in image segmentation. I think I put that paper in references. Okay, so I think I have some more time. Maybe I will. I told you one combinatorial information which you can infer from the eigenvalue of the Laplacian. So I will just emphasize on that part now. I will take another 5 minutes. Okay, see in this slide we have seen that the graph G is connected if and only if 0 is an eigenvalue with multiplicity 1. Okay, that means that the second smallest eigenvalue is positive. Okay, but the second smallest eigenvalue will tell something more about connectedness. Okay, how well your graph is connected. So what do I mean by how well the graph is connected? Okay, so let me call this as lambda 2. So if lambda 2 is the second smallest eigenvalue, okay, lambda 2 of G is strictly greater than 0 if and only if the graph G is connected. Okay, so this quantity connectivity. Okay. This lambda 2 is called algebraic connectivity. Okay. So I will justify why it is called algebraic connectivity. So Miroslav Fiedler in I think 1974, he proved that this lambda 2 of G, okay, this is always less than or equal to the vertex connectivity of your given graph. Okay. So vertex connectivity, I hope most of you know, the minimum number of vertices required to remove from the graph. Maybe I will use some notation. Mu of G.
Connectivity is a kappa notation in graph theory.
Oh, okay. Kappa you are using. Okay. I will use kappa. Okay. So kappa of G. So kappa of G is vertex connectivity. So this lambda 2 of G is always less than or equal to kappa of G. Okay. The vertex connectivity of G. That means that, so vertex connectivity is the minimum number of vertices required to remove from the given graph such that the resultant graph is disconnected. Okay. Assume that I'm working with a connected graph. So this is a surprising result. So this quantity you see, this is spectral quantity. This is a object which obtained from eigenvalues of a matrix. This gives a lower bound for the vertex connectivity. Okay. So another way, if you carefully look at this inequality, it says that when the second smallest eigenvalue of your Laplacian, if it is high, that forces that the vertex connectivity is also high. Right? So lambda 2 of G, if it is high in magnitude, then a kappa of G is also high in magnitude. That means you need those many vertices to remove from the given graph such that this graph will disconnected. Your graph will become disconnected. Okay, so that's the meaning I said that this lambda 2 measures the connectivity of your underlying graph. Okay, so for the complete graph, if you see for the complete graph, what is vertex connectivity? So if you assume K1 is disconnected, you have to remove all the n-1 all the n-1 vertices from your given graph in order to get a disconnected graph. So there the vertex connectivity equal to n-1, and you can prove that algebraic connectivity equal to n-1 in that case also. Just that is a basic matrix theory exercise. So if I denote a Kn to be a complete graph, compute A of Kn is the adjacency matrix of complete graph. Okay, so that can be written as J minus I, where J stands for all ones matrix. It's an n by n matrix whose all entries are equal to 1. I stands for the adjacency matrix. Okay, and this J is the rank 1 matrix whose row sum is equal to n. So corresponding to this n, J, you will get n and 0 are the eigenvalues. Okay. And in a basic course in linear algebra, you might have known, if you know the eigenvalues of a matrix X and I is an identity matrix, then you do know the eigenvalues of X minus I. Just you subtract this minus 1 in this case. Okay, so here n is having multiplicity 1, 0 is having multiplicity n minus 1. So here you will get n minus 1 with the multiplicity 1. Power stands for multiplicity here, and 0 minus 1, that is minus 1 with the multiplicity n minus 1. Okay. And in terms of Laplacian, what will you do? So as again, you have to again use a basic matrix theory trick. So the diagonal entries of your Laplacian for the complete graph, they will be n minus 1 constant. Okay, everything is n minus 1. Just subtract n minus 1 from here. Okay, then you will get the answer. Okay, so maybe I'm just read this result for some time. What will you get? So n minus 1, if you put, you have to subtract n minus 1, you will get J minus I, there n minus 1 into I. What will you get there? Okay, so that's an easy exercise. You can verify it and you can convince yourself this lambda 2 of G for complete graph it is less than or equal to, but Fiedler proved it for much more general class. Okay. So this paper, like as of now, this paper is the basic paper by Mr. Fiedler, which appeared in a Czechoslovak mathematical journal, 1974, I guess. So as of last week, its citation was 4,500. So this paper is cited. It's a 7-page paper. I would say, like, you can use this paper for master students for their MSc thesis. That's a easy. You can read the paper very easily. Of course, some effort should be. You have to put some effort. Okay. But there's a very interesting naive paper. It contains a powerful tool. So this idea is, or this result is used in many of applied fields. Okay. Yeah, I think if you know about the expanders and Cheeger's constant, okay, Cheeger's inequality and all those things, that isoperimetric, what is that? isoperimetric constant or the Cheeger's constant that can be bounded in terms of, that can be given bounded both above and below in terms of the second smallest eigenvalue, lambda 2. Okay, so again, that computing that Cheeger's constant is a tough problem. Okay, I think again that's NP complete or NP hot, something. It's not an easy problem. So this lambda 2 sort of gives a relaxation to that. Okay, so yeah, so I think I have given a brief overview of basics of Laplacian and a couple of instances where you can apply, where it is applied. Okay, so now I will move on to the reference section. Okay, so for the Laplacian, most of the results which I discussed can be found in Professor Bappert's book on graphs and matrices. Okay, and this bisection method and its general thing we can found out in, I think, Hoffman and I think these 3 papers you can see the basic ideas. Okay, the paper which I mentioned, which was cited for more than 4,000 times, is the third one. Okay, algebraic connectivity of graphs. You can see it's a 7-page paper. Yeah, and Hahn and Johnson, that's a textbook for matrix analysis. It's an encyclopedia. Whatever you want to know about matrices, you can find it here. So this is an interesting paper by Ravi Kannan, Santosh Vempala, and Adrian Pedda. So this is a paper in which they are analyzing the properties of spectral clustering. So the paper title itself is fancy, you see, on spectral clustering, good, bad, on clustering, good, bad, and spectral. Okay, so spectral clustering can be bad also, spectral clustering can be good also. So there are some assumptions on the data when you put your spectral clustering will work nicely. Okay, it's a nice paper to read, but it's little involved. Okay, yeah, and this paper by Nadler and Glom, you can see the title says what it is: fundamental limitations of spectral clustering. What are the limitations of spectral clustering? And this paper by Andrew Ng, Jordan, and Vias. So this paper is also kind of survey paper. You can get many things from here. And for partitioning, what I have done today, the toy example I have taken from this lecture notes. So this is a lecture notes by Christian Sood. It is available in his web page. I have taken the partitioning problem I have taken from this lecture notes, and I'm just explaining. Yeah, this is a paper by Spielman and Tang. The spectral partitioning will work for some classes of graphs. This appeared in linear algebra applications. And the spectral clustering example, whatever I have given in the second part. So those things are from this tutorial. This is a fantastic tutorial. It's much readable. You can read it if you want to see some of the application sides of this topic. Okay. Yeah, that's all for today. If you have any questions, you can ask me.
Can we say any degree sequence or degrees from this Laplacian matrices?
The diagonal entries of the Laplacian matrix is nothing but the degree sequence. Diagonal entries, if you see, that's the degree.
Right. Okay.
So have these?
Sorry, actually, not a degree sequence. Any planarity, the type of Eulerian or Hamiltonian?
Oh, okay. That is a non-trivial question. I'm not an expert in those things, but I think something is there.
Okay.
The best person is Boyan Moher. So you can see his homepage. You can see his papers. He's discussing all those things.
Okay. Okay.
Planarity and this algebraic.
So, excuse me. So, have these clustering algorithms been actually implemented in packages like Sage, for example, or any other?
Python codes are there for sure. So, just I think these are all well implemented. Python codes are there.
Okay.
Sage, is it? I think you are asking like in command form. Like if I give you n lines, will I get just the output? That I'm not sure.
Okay.
But the base codes are available. I think this Ulrich von Luxemburg. I think you can visit her homepage. This contains a lot of interesting data there. Okay. I mean, a lot of interesting articles related to it. Yeah.
Okay. And the other question I had was there is this nice characterization you stated about bipartite graphs in terms of eigenvalues. So are there extensions of these criteria to say multipartite graphs, for example? I mean, it may be interesting.
like a multipartite, you don't have this type of nice characterization. Like, I mean, in terms of spectrum symmetric, I don't think anything is there. But using the spectrum, we can say something about about the multipartite graph. I think if you take a complete multipartite graph, maybe I will talk about it tomorrow. Complete multipartite graph, they will have exactly one positive eigenvalue, and vice versa. I think complete multipartite graphs are the only graphs which will have only one positive eigenvalue. Rest of the eigenvalues will be negative.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay.
Hello, shall I conclude?
Yeah, if there are no questions, you can conclude.
Okay. On behalf of the Department of Mathematics, Pune University, and all the entire participant, I would like to thank Sir Rajesh Kannan sir. Within short period of time, he discussed so many nice things like spectrum, properties of spectrum, and also he discussed one nice problem, that is a spectrum partition problem, what is clustering Laplacian matrices. So I am sure that all the precious knowledge that Rajesh sir gave us will definitely help us our further research. So thank you, sir, and also thanks all the participants.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. If you have any question, you can ask now. No issue.